Welcome to Decode It, a podcast series helping understand more about computer technologies and its beginnings. I'm Ashley Griffin, involved in IT from the 1980s, first with the Atari ST, then on to computer networks in the early 1990s. This episode is about the SMTP service, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It came around in November 1981. It listens for connections on port 25 to receive messages from other SMTP servers. It was also used for client software to connect to the server to send a message. Later, port 587 was then used as that would support TLS encryption to allow communication with the client applications. Communication between computers started in around the 1960s. As the government's ARPANET came around in 1971 in California, more PCs were being connected and therefore messages were being passed between the computers via the Send Message or SNDMSG program, which Ray Tomlinson of Raytheon adapted to send messages. At that point, no standard was in place. However, talks had started about protocols such as Mailbox Protocol and Mail Protocol. November 1977, the FTP service was used to move and store messages between computers. We covered the FTP server in an earlier episode. It stands for File Transfer Protocol. The SMTP standard came around in 1981. As FTP was used before, that would explain why the SMTP protocol is based on sequential text commands, very similar to the FTP service and its method of moving data between PCs and servers. SMTP run in parallel with another protocol called UUCP, which is Unix to Unix Copy Program, which is best suited for systems not always connected to a network, such as desktop PCs. UUCP was mostly used in the Usenet news groups. However, UUCP protocol is practically no longer used. Both SMTP and UUCP use a store and forward method to move messages between the PCs and/or servers. SMTP had no encryption or authentication methods, so was highly susceptible to hijacking. Also, the SMTP server was generally an open relay, meaning it would receive and forward any message. By 2002, only 1% were left this way due to the ISP blocking the use of open relay SMTP servers, essentially making the SMTP service impractical by its original design. In November 1995, SMTP was extended by allowing extensions to be added to the service and was then known as eSMTP. The late 1990s, most companies had an SMTP server to allow messages to move between employees and send messages to other companies located on the internet. However, due to the emerging internet, more employees would be outside of the office and require sending messages to staff and contacts in other companies. This turned the simple SMTP server into a communication hub with client application software to facilitate secure connection to move a message, thereby making it a bridge for a client on a mobile device to transfer a message back into the company securely, then out to another recipient who was also on the internet through their own SMTP and client communication hub. SMTP was originally designed for text only. Attaching files wasn't possible. So MIME, which is Multi-Purpose Internet Mail Extensions, was added and relied on the receiving message agent to decode that message. Yeah, I remember in the late 1990s and still today hearing, I have an attachment arrived as mime.dat. That attachment required decoding. Most of this was due to Microsoft Outlook unable to decode the message. Not good for a mail client whose only job is to read an email message. 2012 saw an addition of UTF-8 over just ASCII, offering the ability to use Latin and other characters such as Chinese. I bumped into this issue a fair amount this year, 2025, with regards to the HTTP reverse proxy servers and its character code set not being UTF-8. However, that's a subject for another episode. Generally, how an SMTP server works is the client will connect to the server either on port 25 or 587 using TLS encryption. It will send a series of commands via text to the SMTP server, then a stream of ASCII data that is the message body. SMTP is for sending and receiving text-based messages. The client software uses a totally different protocol such as POP, which is Post Office Protocol, IMAP, which supported mailbox folder trees, then later ActiveSync and Microsoft's EAS, all of which would be subjects for another episode. SMTP is highly secure when you and the recipient owns your own SMTP email servers, as the connection between them is direct, encrypted, and doesn't use any cloud-based corporate systems such as Outlook.com and Gmail.com. Your message is direct from you to the receiving server and generally is encrypted via TLS. Moving beyond emails, there are other private hosted services which can replace cloud-based services like WhatsApp and the soon deprecated Skype, keeping all your text, voice and video calls private, encrypted and totally out of the cloud. However, again, that will be a subject for another episode. Thank you for spending some time with me. Subscribe to see more in the Decode It series.